This is Shawn Crystal. Catch the Inkpulp podcast on Pharcyde TV Wednesdays at noon Pacific Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Come hang. Peace. This is the Inkpulp podcast.
My internet doesn't crap out like it typically does.
Yeah, and I'm going to get a better mic stand too, so I can get that deep, penetrating voice.
Yeah, that's definitely what you need.
That's what you have. You have bass. Like I can feel it on the floor. my bass tube under my desk.
It's this mixer that's off to the side that I showed you.
Oh, you have a sound mixer too?
Mm-hmm.
My God, you got a. What made you get all this stuff?
My buddy Michael DiNicola.
Right, but
when I hear him streaming, especially when I was just using all the USB stuff that I was using, because I was really in the space of just like, I don't want to get too involved. I don't want to plug in too many things and yada, 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 right? Like, I just want to be able to, and there's value in that. I think if you really, at the end of the day, if you're in the business of just like recording your stuff, either streaming or you're recording your process and you're kind of talking through it or whatever it is, right? There's more value in the content than ultimately like the presentation, right? If you were to balance, if you were to contrast and sort of like versus, you know what I mean? Like if you were to get a versus space, hey, should I get a good camera? You know, especially if you're streaming art and some good lighting, or should I get like good mic or whatever? I'd always opt for a good camera and good lighting. You know, you can get away with less about mic and everything, but you know, considering that I was going to do a little bit more live streaming, especially, or at least that was the plan. I was going to do a little bit more live streaming.
That's what I was asking. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a more comprehensive setup. And really, when I was listening to my buddy Mike stream, I'm like, what is that? And he showed me his mixer. And yeah, it's amazing, right? Because it's XLR and he's processing the heck out of the sound that's coming through his very expensive SMV microphone, right? And so he's processing it a little bit more, but there's no way to get that, at least not back then, right? Maybe there's microphones now. I think there are actually USB microphones now that can kind of do it. And so when he was asking me, you know, do you really want to get into this? Because this gets pricey very quickly. Right. And I said, yeah, it gets pricey, but there's you can help mitigate it, you know, like you don't have to get the high end stuff because you're not really podcasting. You're not really, you know, and I thought to myself, like, I mean, what are the trade-offs? And he says, well, you're going to have to do a little bit more noodling on your own. Right. Like trying to figure any and all of this stuff out. And I was like, man, I'm still in lazy mode. You know, I want to get the best stuff without having to think about what buttons to press. And so I did a little bit of research on my own after he gave me his recommendations. And that's where we landed into this. So I think like right now, camera setup looks good. Lens looks okay. Right. And then the lighting came next. And then finally I got into the microphone space and I said, screw it, you know, pull the trigger and have it ready for when I do start streaming a little bit more.
Okay.
Here we are.
Okay. I feel like if mine was closer, I think I have a good mic. It's just if it was closer.
I think you're what now, like 1.5 feet away from your mouth, right?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, you sound like if we were talking in the room, you were a little bit like you're 2 chairs, 3 chairs away, you know?
Right. But when I talk like this, it probably sounds... Yeah.
Exactly. It's the same situation.
I just need a different mics. Like my mic stand I have my art table would be better.
There you go. Bring it closer to your mouth, man.
Yeah, I will. I just need a mic stand to do so.
I still want to find a way to make this microphone work.
Well, you just blew out your sound big time. What did you just change?
I switched to the boom mic that's above my head.
Oh yeah, that doesn't sound good. It's staticky and it's tinny and thin versus what you know. It's funny.
Now. Yeah, it's because you've gotten accustomed to this microphone. Right?
Sure. Turn on the other one. Turn on the other one again. Let me hear.
Here we go. This is that mic.
Yeah, it's staticky though. The levels are all off.
Yeah. It's I forget that
just the volume. That's
you know
to adjust.
I forget that this mic above me. Number one, this is like one of the better boom mics that they actually use in like production. When they're shooting movies and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, when this is being recorded to a separate audio track, this still gets processed in the studio to kind of bring out the best sound out of it, right?
Sure.
And then secondly, my office or my studio isn't made for it, if that makes any sense. There's still a lot of reverb happening, still bouncing off the tabletop and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm hearing all that jazz.
Yeah. But when you listen to this mic, especially because this is a broadcast microphone, this thing is just like dedicated to picking up our conversation.
Yeah. Oh man. Maybe in a year I'll get there. I'm on lighting next. I got the camera.
Yeah.
Lighting's my next jam.
Well, you just figured out exactly what to do, which is just to bring that mic a little bit closer.
Yeah. I just need a mic stand, like I need the overhead mic thing. I can.
Yeah.
Right there.
You're doing fine. What's news, man?
Oh man, lots of stuff.
Hey, before I forget, I won't be able to go to Heroes this year.
Why?
There's work related stuff that I need to get to.
Damn.
Same week. It's just a lot.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you'll be missed.
Yeah, I thought I'd have a little bit of fun, but having not been there for a while.
Birthday. We were gonna party down.
That's right. It's always on that weekend, and I thought, man, it'd be great to be able to, number one, ring in a show. Well, we're going to be at we're going to be at MegaCon together.
Yeah, we'll be at MegaCon, and then we'll be at Emerald City like a month.
Well, maybe we can just, we can do an advanced birthday celebration, considering we won't be able to see each other.
Let's do it in Seattle. You're going to Seattle, right?
Maybe. No, actually, no. I declined.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I'm going to go to hang out with you. Right.
But you're going to come down, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do it then, because Mateo will be there.
Oh yeah, I don't care about him so much.
but it's my birthday. I'd like to have you and Mateo. Let's go get a nice dinner. The three of us.
That's a little weird.
We can have a pajama party too.
Oh, we can double up, right? Because at MegaCon for sure, DeKal's going to be there.
Right.
So we'll do the.
And Tommy's there too.
Sean's not quite in the grave yet. Birthday.
Right.
And then by the time we land in
the afterlife,
that's the ghost of Christmas yet to be. You know what
I mean? Righteous. All right, cool. But MegaCon's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm interested in seeing what the vibe is like. You've done more than a few shows at this point, so you kind of have a temperature take. MegaCon, I think, is going to be MegaCon is going to be the first one that I end up going to in such a long time.
I didn't realize how big that show had gotten. I haven't done MegaCon in, I think I figured out, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
I got my first job there, and I haven't been back since.
You're kidding. You would think you'd want to continue your streak of.
I was just busy. I mean, I had work. I was doing a bunch of cons. I just wasn't doing that one, and for no particular reason. I always liked that show.
Yeah, I don't recall the last time that I was there, but definitely I liked it, but I got to the point, and you know this, and maybe this is something that we can talk about, right? When you're at the beginning part of your career and you're either starting to get invited to or you have the opportunity to, I think we're in a really advantageous and privileged position of being represented by a guy like Jason Schechter for Essential Sequential, right? Like he, as best as he can, considering the quality, the pedigree, and the number of his clientele, which is still in a way limited, right? And that's by design. He doesn't take on people just for the sake of taking on people, because he really does want to give them the best sort of experience as far as being an art rep is concerned. I know sometimes it can get, depending on the show, depending on the guests that he's representing, it can get pretty overwhelming very quickly. So he tries to sort of subsidize that experience. Subsidize might not be the word, but at least he tries to patch up the holes in what he can handle at any given time by like bringing on help and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool. But like when we finally got the chance to sit with some of these guys, and I'm name dropping only out of reverence and respect, not because of like, look how cool the guys that we get to hang out with. It's guys like, that's like legend guys like, you just mentioned Tommy, right? Like, and we see guys like Tim Sale, and we see Klaus Janson, and we see, Wanho who does Pharcyde, and these guys who are, I would think, exemplaries in the industry, whether it be here or overseas, right?
Did you just say Pharcyde?
Isn't that what it's called?
I don't. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's how I say it. Is it Pharcyde? Okay.
I don't know. What would make it Pharcyde?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Spanish?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good.
I don't know either, but I mean, listen. Say it how you want. You say tomato.
Well, yours sounds so refined. Mine sounds so bad.
My point is, Shawn, if you'll allow me to get to it, is the fact that we were fortunate enough to sit with some of these guys, and so opportunities open up to us, and in my case, I think it's similar to you. Like, we have jokingly talk about riding these guys' coattails sometimes when we get into these shows that we have very little business getting in. It's not to diminish our body of work and the work that we put behind, but sometimes doors that were only partially open to guys like us suddenly become wide open due to the efforts of Jason Schechter. And
we get flights covered, we get free table space,
exactly,
we get hotels,
exactly. It's amazing. It's amazing. So. And so, not to diminish any and all of that, but we've been, at least for me, I've been doing this for a while. I remember the first Seattle Comic-Con that I'd ever done, first time that I'd ever met Tim Sale, and Jason always uses this as a point of reference, and it's mind-blowing to me every time I think about it. When he and I first met, and we were traveling up and down the East Coast, all packed into his like, what is it? Like the VW Touareg or whatever it's called. You know what I mean? The name of the brand of that car, right? The model of that car.
Yeah.
We did 5 shows in 4 weeks. And I remember Iron Man. He keeps telling me that's the weekend that Iron Man 1 came out.
Okay, I remember that.
Right? And I was like, holy crap, that was such a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? That feels like a lifetime ago. And the fact that he has it at a point of reference is really super charming. The guy is a sweetheart.
Absolutely.
But 10 years later, you fast forward to the kinds of things that we're doing now. And again, there's people who are just starting in their journey of like becoming going to conventions and finally having an opportunity to get these tables and having aspirations, if not fulfilling the aspirations of breaking even by the time a 3-day show is done. Right.
Right.
For me, it got kind of not old, but every convention just kind of started mashing together. There are ones that are like exceptional, right? And that's the reason why I'm a little bit, heartbroken at the idea I have to cancel on Heroes because of work. But, you think about that many years worth of shows across the country, a handful on the other side of the world, right? And as nuanced and as exciting as those were, like unique and really sort of like, I remember when we all went to Italy doing shows.
Yeah.
And to this day, that's still, I was like, wow, that was 4 years ago that happened, going on 5,
Yeah, it was.
It's bonkers to think about that kind of stuff, right? But ultimately, short of a few examples there, it all just kind of starts mashing together. It doesn't hurt that some of these shows are put on by the same kind of promoters, very gracious, very generous promoters that have us on. But at the end of the day, it starts to kind of mash together. And near the end, I don't know if I was, and I think this is pretty natural and organic, but I don't know if I was appreciating it as much as I did 5 years, 6 years, 7 years prior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That. I was there. I was in that headspace.
Yeah.
I found lately I'm appreciating it, I think, more than I ever have.
Really? Tell me.
It's because I've changed my whole mindset now.
Oh, sure.
So I'm able to just sort of enjoy the experience of being there and not spend my time worrying about money, worrying about opportunities, worrying about networking. But I also have this business I'm there to promote. So now I'm at a point where like I get to have these conversations. Like there were probably a good 4 or 5 people I spoke to for 15 to 20 minutes each at the one-day show in Boston.
That's awesome.
And for my business, for my brand, I believe that's invaluable for building trust, for building, getting people not just to come in and buy something, but to be a part of what I'm building and stick around.
Yeah.
I think is that's where cons for me now are like this really interesting opportunity.
Yeah. I don't want to take anything away from at some point I don't want to take anything away from the experience that I have at cons in as far as like my lack of appreciation, because that's not what I'm getting at, right? I do appreciate it every single time that we're there. I do have a moment of reflection. I'm like, man, how did we get here? Because we were all packed into a VW SUV, 5 shows in 4 weeks. It was kind of crazy. And here we are. I never have to carry you and I never have to carry a portfolio into a show.
We don't have to carry a banner. That's a really big one.
Yeah, but you see what I mean? Like that level, I still have that level of appreciation, for the space that we're occupying now as opposed to back in the day.
Yeah.
But certainly not too dissimilar to you, but not exactly identical, right? Which is, I'm in a different mind space in as far as the industry is concerned, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, me too.
Right. And
absolutely.
Rare am I wowed by the things that are happening inside the industry. You might, it's probably part cynicism, part like they're not going to do anything new anymore,
Right.
And my overall excitement for the business of comics, and I think I'm pretty consistent in this, like the business of comics has sort of like diminished, right? I don't care for it anymore because it's not fun,
Sure.
The comics part, anytime I see a brand new creator, and this about me, like at the end of the show, Sunday, Saturday night, or Sunday where I'm about to leave, I always try to make it through the show and be like, I don't know who that guy is. I'm going to try to buy a comic from them and read it.
Yeah, you are good about
what they're doing, So I think that's where the frequency shift happened for me. Now, doing the commissions is great because number one, it helps to stand up, my ever fragile ego. Like, oh, people still know me; they still want me to draw for them. That's kind of cool. That is confidence boosting. But jokes aside, I really do like drawing, right? But just not, and this is where we are identical, just not to the point where it's like, oh man, I better get 14 this week or this weekend, or else this is gonna feel weird. And there's this internal competition between you, me, and Maddie of like, oh, how many did you get? And how many did you get? And blah, blah, blah.
Like, Maddie blew us all out of the water.
Yeah. I think he turned that corner to be like rock star level, and the next thing you know, that's all he's doing all week. And also it doesn't hurt that his convention fast is different from a lot of different convention fasts, speed.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't like that guy. So it stopped becoming about that, at least for me. And just like, I like drawing and I just happen to have this much time. Now the convention math always falls, goes down the path of like, okay, so how many should I take this weekend? Because that's all I can do. There are a lot on here that are like freaking awesome. And here's the part that I still hold myself beholden to, is that level of courtesy I want to sort of boomerang back to somebody who was kind enough to come and support me.
Sure.
Like, I'm not on a mainstream book. I don't think I'm in a public spotlight when it comes to something that would warrant a comic book convention sitting behind an artist alley. And somebody was kind enough to come to our table and say, hey, Shawn, hey, Eric, can you draw me something? I always want to be like, hell yeah, I want to draw you something. That's really cool. But then you balance that out with like, how many can I do this weekend without, tiring myself out and slowly but surely eroding my appreciation for being at these kinds of shows.
For sure. I mean, it's nice to have that off my plate now, that worry about commissions. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll take one, maybe two in Orlando. Maybe I'm gonna probably bring one or two paintings down that I want to finish at my table at my leisure, because I think people like to see the act of finishing a painting, so that also get people talking about what are you using, how are you doing that, and then I can mention my online stuff too.
Yeah. The reason why I bring that up is because I'm thinking about this Orlando show, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to see Shawn. I can't wait to see Jeff, and the breakfast and lunch. And I rarely join you guys for dinner because you guys are all.
I'm not gonna, you
guys are like deviants. You know what I mean? You're back you go out. You're out until 4 a.m.
Oh, weird. Dude, I haven't done that in a long time. I go out to midnight or 1 o'clock maybe. But honestly,
I'm well within turning back into a pumpkin by midnight, 1 o'clock.
Right, but I might be doing MegaCon your style this year.
Just go back in the hotel and not talking to anybody.
Yeah,
watch the adult channel and
well, I can leave your room for the 30 seconds.
It sucks, you watch 2 minutes of it, you have to pay for the entire movie.
I might go out and have a drink or two here and there, but I mean, I know who's going to MegaCon, and I'll be hanging with you. I mean, DeCal doesn't go out late. He's in bed around the same time as you, and Tommy, and unless, and it's also Orlando, so it's kind of I don't, from what I remember, it's a difficult town to just go out in because you've got all those tourists there, in the parks are there, and everything's going to be packed and crowded, and you can't just like show up somewhere with a bunch of people. So
that was from back in the day. Who knows how much thing? Well, no, that's a lie. It is Florida, it is Orlando. So to their credit.
And also, I just don't want to wear myself out. Like I don't want to come home just like zombified like I used to.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And so I'm down for quiet nights and chilling in the room. And
well, it is to say that the thing that I'm looking for. It's a what?
4-day show.
Oof. Pace yourself, young man.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of sleeping.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's what we've become now, right? So you contrast us to somebody, you know Kreese, don't you? Like, I look at that young man and his sort of like go-get-emness and his drive. I look at that kid, I'm all like, I remember you.
Yeah. I mean, look,
I remember that energy and output,
my drive is still there. My days at home are spent like, I can't believe the amount of things I'm doing every day. So, I just know at a con, there's no reason for me to, I'm not trying to get on the next X book at Marvel. I'm not trying to do that anymore. So
that's really what's changed, hasn't it? We've sort of, again, if there's if there's a frequency that we're picking up on, it's more about establishing a worth outside of the stuff that we've done.
Right.
Which is great, which is, again, I'm pretty happy with the stuff that I was able to do back in the day.
For sure. Me too.
Yeah. But now I look at the stuff that we have yet to do. Right. Or in a way, this is my personal motivation, is how I light a fire under my ass, is to be like, what didn't I get a chance to do? And like, what am I missing out on? And how can I do that as much of that as possible, like right now?
Right. And exactly. I mean? And I'm the same exact way. So a con for me is a chance to really firm up and build a deeper connection with people who are fans of mine, so that they'll follow me on the places I want to go. So I don't need to network with editors. I want to connect with people who will support a creator-owned project I'm going to do.
That's it. That's awesome. I think I actually did that with my social media from back in the day, right? Where it establishes you as a creator, you as an artist. That was accidental. That wasn't strategic.
Really?
It was just like, that's what I love doing. I like drawing those things, and it just happened to be that people liked me drawing those things,
Right.
And so I got lucky. I don't know if that's an easy thing to do these days, because there's just so much of it now,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm working hard as hell on social media to get that. And there's so much out there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, we talked about this, a few years ago, right? And I think it's still a consistent thing that I'm holding true to, which is, it's a long, arduous climb up to get from the visualized thing that you have in your head for the project that you're doing versus the actuality of that visualized thing, right? And along the way, there's always new things that pop up that help to sort of amend or change, wholesale change your approach to be like, oh, I would have never thought of that at all, for you, it's the schooling, right? But actually, the point that I wanted to make first was like, you just need to stick to it.
Yeah.
Right? Both you and I just need to find the tenacity to just hold on.
That's it. That's actually one of the things I was going to bring up tonight to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, just hold on to it, because what's great about, and also what's devastating and terrible about these projects that we're doing, which is effectively, in a broad sense, right, brand oriented, right, artist/creator centric, is that it requires you to be all in on it, because there's nobody else doing the heavy lifting for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Of course, you can bring on like vendors and obviously freelancers and people who are more familiar and successful in the space. But certainly overall, when they say, okay, great, for me to do my job, Shawn, you need to generate X, Y, and Z so that I can apply it in the best way possible, but that still goes to you, right? You're leveraging their expertise, you're leveraging their history and their pedigree. But at the end of the day, they can't do anything without having it sort of springboard for you first. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, which is like, man, this takes so much time, so much sort of like, hold on. It wants to get away from you so much.
Right.
For you, it's your instruction, Inkpulp instruction, and for me, it's this crowdfunding thing, right?
And that's my next thing. Is my plan is to get the instruction to a good place so that I can then go do what you're doing now.
Yeah,
two things.
Yeah. Now, exactly. You're like, whoa, I've climbed this particular mountaintop, reached this peak.
I mean, I haven't climbed it yet. I'm trying to get there.
I'm climbing this mountaintop,
right.
Realizing there's probably another mountain that's that much more arduous, that much more challenging.
Yeah.
Right? But man, oh man, I don't know if I would have been prepared to be in the psychological, if not artistic, headspace to do what I'm doing now. I just don't think I believed in it enough.
You're saying a few years ago?
Yeah. I'm saying just as recently as 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I would be able to do what I'm doing now, which is like, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I was talking to Steph last night, and it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, you started at your own school. Like, what? Yeah. Who the fuck are you? Like, what a maddening, crazy thing to think you're capable of. But absolutely. I did. Yeah. And now it's just like, you're right. Now, like, there have been a bunch of points along the road where it's been like, I haven't asked myself, do I bow out now? But I could see how at these certain points, if I hadn't just said to myself, I have to dig in and just ride this, because I know it's going to click at some point.
Right.
If I didn't have that in my head, I would have been out a few times already.
Yeah.
And this week was a big one.
Yeah.
That's leading into what I wanted to talk about. So before I go there, I want to finish up what you were trying to get to.
Yeah.
Finish it up.
No, I think that's pretty much ties it up, because it's similar to you, where I'm not so inexperienced and not so naive that when I took a look at the body of work, I was just like, yeah, totally doable. You know, like I didn't go in there uninformed, right? I knew how much was in front of me. What was even more scary is what I didn't know.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what it means to go on a tour, so to speak, online without the convention, without, the typical tools that are available to us when we're promoting a sketchbook, when we're promoting a body of work, when we're, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that looks like. But this is what I meant when I said, like, I don't think I was attuned to this kind of frequency 5 years ago as I am now, because not knowing those, that dark area where there was like, oh, there's no way for me to define what that is until I go into it. That would have been enough for me to self-select out.
Right.
Because you would not just take a look at the variable, or at the very least the unknown. You would take a look at the known, not the least of which, like how much it costs to print these things, and you would go, man, that could be better spent on fill in the blank, right? Like find so many things that you could end up spending that on that would, in that moment, in forever, how long you have it elevates your quality of living, right? But you take a look at it and you say, like, if I just invest this now, and again, it's substantial, right? If I just invest this now, you take that leap of faith, to go like, if I invest this now, I don't know if this is going to work out. There's nothing that tells me that it will. I have to have enough confidence that if I'm doing what I can on my end, right, that I believe in, that I'm enthusiastic about, that I'm really like super into, that translates into the work, and people will pick up on that. But what's key, at least for me, and I don't know if it's similar with you, is that it's the first time that I'd ever felt that sense of liberty and ownership.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't investing it in something else for someone.
For me, this whole process, and it's not even just Inkpulp instruction, but it's everything I do now. I think diving into Inkpulp instruction really made me come to this realization of the idea of investing in yourself, and how rewarding that can be if you believe in yourself. If you have I'm not going to say confidence. I guess it is confidence, but just the belief that you're going to do it. And I mean, I have like a few rap songs that I'll listen to that I have this playlist called Ego, where they're very ego driven, but there's just this one, and I hear it a lot when I bet on myself. I bet on myself, like through all these songs. But there's just one line by J. Cole, and he says, "When I'm betting on myself, I completely double down."
Yeah,
he says it with such confidence and belief. I'm like, that's it. Believing in yourself like that, like, go for it. Invest in yourself, but also, and this is kind of what I wanted to get into today is, like, let's say, for example, you're like, I'm going to invest in myself and I'm going to publish the issue 1 on my own, and then I'll sell issue 1. And if issue 1 doesn't make the money back that you had hoped, the old me would have said, you have failed in your endeavor. But that's not the case. That's step 1 of the big investing in yourself. So what about issue 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on? And what I've learned in this idea of investing in yourself, or this idea of not failing, I've realized there's really no such thing as failure unless you give up.
Sure.
As long as you see every challenge as an opportunity to learn from and do better from, then you're moving forward.
Yeah.
And one thing that you have taught me, not intentionally, just through knowing you and through watching you and through your actions, is this: you have this great, almost monk-like ability to not get emotionally involved in how things happen. So if something doesn't go great, you don't get upset. You look at it very, very calmly and say, what am I learning? What are my options? And so on. So like this week was kind of like the first time where something really big hit Inkpulp Instruction. And it was just like, I didn't get upset. I didn't go down that wormhole of negative self-talk and negative self-belief and just wanting to give it all up and throw it all away. It was just like, oh, okay. So if that road has this giant dead end, well, then we just need to pivot.
Yeah.
And if we pivot, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned through you.
Yeah.
And that's, I wanted to get talking about that because that's new for me.
Yeah.
I used to, man, my emotions owned me before.
Sure.
And any sort of resistance or obstacle or anything would really send me down a negative self-thinking spiral for a couple weeks.
Yeah, let me address that real quick. There are times when I get self-conscious about stuff, right? And oftentimes the receiving end is my wife, where I go, I'll bring up an insecurity in regards to a venture like this and be like, oh, A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z, right? Now I premise all of that with her because sometimes my wife knows I'm so actionable oriented, right? She goes into that space with me as well. Like sometimes when my wife says that, she's in a very different sort of emotional space.
Right,
I just want to be able to say this out loud, right? And when I go into problem solving space or problem solving mode, when she's going through it, it's not appreciated very much. So she knows me enough where when I start bringing things up, she immediately went into, well, you could do this, this, and this,
Right.
And I said, actually, no, there's a lot of value in me being able to just say it out loud to somebody who may or may not intimately understand the nuances of it. So if you're interested, please ask. But sometimes I just got to get the thoughts out of my head because I'm bouncing. I'm the one that's living with them all day and they're bouncing around, for like 24 hours, 72 hours, right? Whatever, how long. And so I said, would you mind if I just say this stuff out loud to you? And in vocalizing it, I can hear myself say it and be like, that's weird. That's a weird thing to get hung up on, right? So yeah, I do have my moments of like, oh man, that sounded really silly and insecure, very human, but certainly still.
That's what I recognized in me was I was like, oh, what an insecure thought.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, okay, let that one go.
Yeah. So here's the thing that I learned a long time ago. But I didn't really hyper focus on it, and to the point where it's the thing that I would often now I default to, right? Or I refer to it, I should say. So when any endeavor, when something is not working out well, right? I look at that particular result as just the result and say, okay, that result didn't work out well.
Right.
I refer back to the plan, right? And I go like, is the plan solid? Right? Is the plan still applicable right now? Right? Is this still doable? Does it scale? Does it, all the little challenges that I kind of put in front of myself to go like, is the plan still solid? Right? And if the answer is, yeah, the plan is just solid, that's not the result that I wanted.
Right.
But the plan is still solid.
Right.
So why would I abandon the plan just because I didn't get the immediate result?
Right.
Like, and if the plan calls for, in this case, it's really applicable. If the plan calls for this comic book to be 6 issues, I don't look at the short term, right? Because the plan is let's do 6 issues and make and really proof out that this can be done.
Right. And I've said the same thing in my head. I've always said with Inkpulp Instruction, I try to remind myself of this. I'm not going to judge how it's going until I have 50 episodes out.
Right. That's a great metric. That's a great sort of that's a great landmark. Yeah. To be like, I'm not even thinking about that. What good looks like until 50. 50 looks good to me. That particular number.
I've got caught up in the short term a few times.
Of course.
And then I've pulled back and be like, all right, wait, no, the focus is on getting quality episodes done now.
For sure.
It's costing me a ton of time and money, and I'm like, I need money, so this has to make me money. But I can pull myself out of that and be like, no, just keep going. Keep releasing 2 a month. By the end of next year, I'll be at 50 or close to 50 by the end of 2023. So stay the course.
Yes, because that's the plan, right? Like that's the number that you set in your head. Sometimes, and it's not to say that the plan is immovable, right? It's not to say that it's always in that solid state, right? Things help to inform that plan. But again, I go back to just generally, is the plan good? Does the strategy make sense?
Right.
And the answer is still yes. And most importantly, if it's still, in a way, if part of the plan is, is this financially feasible? And if the answer is still yes, then why wouldn't I continue?
Right. Well, I guess that's the question. That's going to be the question for me to navigate as I'm going through this.
Yeah.
Like how
it's different bullet points for everybody.
Right.
But for me, because I'd never seen, or at least I hadn't seen anything similar, except for, and I think I told you about this very briefly, my level of respect for this guy is so freaking high. His name is Tim Lim, and he puts out a book called Common America.
Yeah.
Right. He writes it with, or he co-created it. His writing partner is a guy by the name of Mark Pellegrini. And I read the first 2 volumes plus the 4th. And it is just an entertaining book. Right. And I don't mean that to be like, oh, it's so nice. When people say, oh, they're nice. Right. Mm-hmm. They kind of understood the lane that they wanted to occupy. And they're just continuing down that lane, right? It's as close to imagining what a one-man marathon looks like, right? And they're just running their pace, right? They're letting, obviously their audience is building, awareness is building. It went from their first campaign on Kickstarter being, 40K. And by the way, this is just one of the many metrics that they have. But I think if I can speak for Tim, which I hope I don't misrepresent him, but the one metric that they were paying attention to, or at least the one metric that's obvious in everybody's faces in these crowdfunding spaces, is the money that each campaign raises. So it went from like 40,000 to now 150,000.
Shit!
Right, like they built that themselves, right?
That's
the
awesome.
Number that they're looking at, I think, and again, I hope I don't misrepresent him, is the backer number. They want an audience to keep growing, and man, there must have been, and I want to be able to talk to Tim. You and I, we should bring him on and just talk to him.
Let's do it.
There must have been some planning at the beginning, right? I want to believe that, because to assume that everybody falls ass backwards into something like I do oftentimes, right, is unfathomable to me, and yet I do it. You know what I mean? Like, to think that Tim and Mark didn't think, okay, this subject matter, these types of stories, right, at least from the creative end, right, this type of drawing, this type of approach visually, like there had to have been some strategy behind that. Right, because now, if you take a look at the body of work, and again, I can't recall how many years apart it is between volume 1 to volume 4 or 5 that they're on right now. Right, Tim has gotten better as a draftsman, right, and it's really starting to catch on. Right, it's really starting to like ingrain itself into not just their backers, not just their ongoing sort of, circulating set of backers who are multiplying, right? But also to the people who are hearing it from those backers, which I think is better than any advertising dollar you could ever give, is to have somebody with word of mouth saying like, you're missing out on this book,
right?
And so I had never seen anything like it in the crowdfunding space. I didn't even know of Common America at all. And I reached out to a good friend of mine, a guy by, I think I've told you this, so forgive me if we're going over old stuff, Shawn, but I talked to a buddy of mine who happens to be in a YouTuber that's in, who covers a lot of Marvel and mainstream comics, Marvel and DC stuff.
Right.
And I reached out to Wes, and he interviewed me for Arcathena 1.
Okay.
And he said, Eric, what you're trying to do, people don't do. They don't do ongoing. They may have connective tissue between volume 1 and volume 2, but nobody's ever done the traditional here's a cliffhanger between issue 1 and issue 2, and it picks up and it does it for 6 issues straight.
Right.
But if the closest thing that I can kind of compare it to is this book called Common America. And I said, like, okay, I don't know what that is, but he put me in, he said, let me reach out to Tim. And Tim being who he is, and I think I take comfort in the term that he used, and I want to appropriate it for myself, which is he refers to himself as just a hobbyist, right? Because there's a full-time job. He's a doctor in his full-time job, and he just does this thing.
He talks about it. Mm-hmm.
And so, like, he didn't care for comic book professionals because he knew. He sort of had this snapshot that they aren't really committed to the thing. They're barely committed to the thing that they're doing, right? When it comes to their 9 to 5, how much more committed can they be in this thing that they're going to have to do on their own?
Right.
And so he had apprehensions, but I think, he told me once after our conversation, he said, after this conversation, it was our first conversation that cued me into, you're taking this seriously because you're actually planning and forecasting. And I'm like, I kind of have to, And from that day forth, he's been giving me the playbook. He's been giving me how to run a championship Super Bowl team, and now I just take that playbook. And by the way, I am by no means an expert at it. So I often call him up and be like, I don't know what I'm doing in this space. But more importantly, we've built such a great professional relationship with each other that he sort of accommodates me by just like volunteering some of this stuff. Hey, did you think about what this is, And what I love about that hobbyist title is that he fully sort of inhabits it, right? He loves being an independent publisher, an independent creator. Zero aspirations to be like recognized by mainstream, zero aspirations to be recognized by these guys who are seemingly the luminaries of whatever. He's just like, right. Between him and Mark, he's like, I'm just going to make my book. And I admire that so much because you can, when you're in social media, your head can go into that space so super fast of like, who's talking about me and what capacity are they talking about me? You know what I mean?
Right. But I think you and I I used to spend so much time in that space, and I don't spend any time in that headspace at all anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I like at a con, I just feel like I'm an island unto myself, and I like that. And so everything I'm doing and everything I think you're doing comics related is we're just trying to do our things.
Yeah, it's been fun, and it's clearly being informed by, as far as the strategy and how to get it out to people, because clearly I'll speak for myself, it's super important to me. That's being informed by a lot of different things that's one of the main contributors is understanding how social media works. Right. But to have that be the final space is, it's so not important anymore. Like as much as it used to be, I cover it generally and I think unfairly to just be like the popularity contest. Right. And I sure as heck don't care about it as much as I used to. These days, it's just about the work.
It's funny. I'm using social media much more these days, but I'm not caring about the followers, the likes, the this and that. It's just I look at everything I'm doing like what I'm looking at is my reach, and every post is like, what did I do? What did I learn to grow my reach on the next one and the next one and the next one?
That's it. It's a wonderful sort of mental space to occupy now, because it's not contingent on how many hearts or thumbs up or retweets or whatever it is. Well, the reach obviously plays into that, but clearly it's more about the learning of how you got that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Funnily enough, the most engagement that I typically get is, whenever I post like an old piece of fan art that I did 4 years ago, 3 years ago, they're like, oh, I did this. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before. That looks so freaking cool. They should let you do, they should let you do these comics. They should let you design X, Y, and Z. And I'm all like, that's flattering. And then I I could have gone the path of not antagonistic, but certainly pessimistic, to be like, man, the only time people pay attention to my work is when I'm doing all this fan art stuff of like ninjas and mutant turtles. You know what I mean? Like I could have gone into that space. Instead, I realized, oh, wait, that's actually really good, right? Because I now have a tool that could potentially allow me to dovetail that kind of awareness, that kind of like, oh, what else is this guy doing?
Right.
Into the stuff that I want to sort of like usher them to. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I've captured your attention. And I think what I used to do in the past was live in that, whoa, I captured you with your attention with like Spider-Man. You really like Spider-Man? I'll draw you more Spider-Man.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's all I had to offer. That's not like bashing myself. It's more like, oh, that's all that was on my mind back in the day.
Yeah.
These days, it's more like, oh, cool, you took a look at that thing, and now maybe you're following me, or at the very least, you're on my timeline, whatever, right? Like, Let me show you this thing that I'm doing.
Right.
Oh, you really like time lapses. Cool. I have a time lapse, but it's not about anybody else's characters. Exactly. It's about my characters. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's the shift for me, where I would be apprehensive, often like down on the idea of like, ugh, people just pay attention to this stuff because it's Batman on a freaking gargoyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, I'm all like, hell yeah, I'll use Batman on a gargoyle.
Right.
You know, like that's gonna get your ass in the seat. Okay, cool. I know how to do that, right?
Right.
I know how to sprinkle that in to my social media posts in the morning when you're paying attention. I don't know where you are in the world, but let's say, and it'll trickle down through the early afternoon. Oh, you're seeing that for the first time? Cool. I'm going to follow that up now with this thing.
Right.
And I think it's that kind of strategy that a lot of creators probably are unwilling to go into because it takes too much work. They would rather defer to how I was back in the day, which is, oh, you like Spider-Man? I can't wait for you to see Venom. Right.
Well, I mean, for me, I think it was, living in that headspace had a lot to do with trying to get on a book. Like if I was on Deadpool, then I could draw some Wolverines, and I'm to blame for this, but it's very easy for the industry, if you're a freelancer, to put you in the mentality where you start to not even realize your worth. It's the characters you're drawing.
Yeah.
And like it was about 2 years ago where I hit a point where I was like, wait a minute, I have a lot more to offer as an artist than just me drawing characters other people own.
Yeah.
And, so getting back to that was really, really liberating and fun. But it had, I remember like working on these pieces, just thinking like, is anyone going to like this at all? And it's just like, because you're just sort of conditioned, or I was conditioned to almost believe that my worth wasn't in my art. It was in the character I was drawing.
Exactly. And whether or not it was relevant at the time, right? Like, Spider-Woman is cool, but Spider-Woman isn't in the Marvel Universe movie, or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, well, I guess this is nice because I'm Spider-Man adjacent or whatever it is. But it's like, you really do. The other point that I wanted to make, I was going to say, you really do have to shift your thinking, which I believe that you did pretty dang successfully. Now it's just a matter of holding on to that and saying like, I'm not going to let go of that. Right. But the other one is, I made a point to say earlier that some people are just not attuned to that or unwilling to do it, right? Or excuse me, they were unwilling to do it. But there's some people who are just not attuned to it, right? Some people are just not like, I don't think there's anything wrong with drawing X, Y, and Z.
And I'm not saying there is. I mean, some people, that's all they want to do, is that they want to just draw the X-Men, and then that's fine. I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. I'm just saying for me, I wanted to do so much more.
Yeah, for sure.
Do so much more.
For sure, yeah. I remember it was actually as early as this morning, and I really took some time to reflect on this back and forth, right? So there is a current shot, and I don't know if you've seen this. There's a current shot in the Thor movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I figured this would come up.
Right. And so people have been sort of like screenshotting the comic book panel that it was taken from versus the shot within the trailer, and they're saying that's Assad, right? Who did that?
Yeah, it's Assad. Yeah.
And so they were like, "Oh man, look at this! They took it directly from Assad, and shouldn't he be paid more?" Blah 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 blah. When we both know, by way of just your contracts, that's not how it works. Everything that you draw belongs to them. They can use it and repurpose it in whatever capacity that they want to see. And certainly, there was something to be said about like, there was a portion of the conversation that centered around just like overall courtesy, like, hey, as a courtesy to the artists who came up with these things, wouldn't it be great if, you were somehow compensated for it? And that's been an ongoing, not so new conversation.
Yeah. Not new at all.
Yeah, because comic book movies have just been on this meteoric climb to relevancy, right? So, anyway, so I asked, and I think by the time I had gotten it, Brian Hitch was talking about it, right? And he had made mention about it, in regards to Assad probably not getting paid out for that, right? We'll probably not see anything substantial from it, right? If he does any at all, right?
Yeah,
maybe a credit, maybe a movie premiere invite or something.
Maybe.
Right. And so he had mentioned, because you forget sometimes that the current Marvel Cinematic Universe premised a lot of the look and feel off of Brian Hitch's Ultimates run.
The whole, for sure.
Not everything, right? But there are threads in there, especially by way of design, especially from like the last, the first Thor movie. We're like, whoa, that's almost shot for shot what he did,
right,
in the Ultimates, And so he had he was in the part of that conversation, and he had said, "Oh, I'm doing this poorly," but he had said like they never did that courtesy for me either, because if they had, even if they paid out to everybody, it would barely make a scratch on what Infinity War and Endgame made, right? Like even if they paid out to all the creators that they took stuff from, the money that Endgame and Infinity War made, it wouldn't have been a scratch on that. They wouldn't have even missed it. They wouldn't have noticed it.
Right. They wouldn't have missed it. Exactly.
They wouldn't have noticed it. And so I thought that was pretty like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's true. And so I introduced the idea to him. I go, knowing full well that this is probably not going to be the last time it happens, knowing full well this is probably going to continue, right? Wouldn't it be advantageous moving forward if you negotiated that into your contract in some capacity?
For
right?
sure.
Wouldn't that be smart, right?
Sure.
And Brian said Marvel nor DC would never let that happen because it sets up this weird precedence, it sets up a precedence. And even if Marvel and DC considered it, neither Disney or Warner Brothers would probably accommodate it, right? And I go like, right, that's probably true.
Right, I agree.
Probably like that's probably spot on business wise, right?
Right.
Now the part that I had to really reflect on, and sorry for taking so long to get here, but like the part that I really had to reflect on was like, you're Brian Hitch. You helped stand up that cinematic universe. Your value is so much more. You are a brand, and I believe an industry unto yourself.
Sure.
And by which I think you would have maybe not the same sort of built-in following because you and Mark Millar were doing Ultimates together, right? And those are well-recognized characters, and Mark is clearly
right. And just real quick, let me pause because just listeners, I don't know if they're even aware of this. I mean, Nick Fury was Sam Jackson in the comics because of Brian well before any movie ever existed.
Sure. That almost got into litigation because Sam Jackson saw it and was like, hey, that's, right. There's a story, and I don't know how true it is, where he saw it could have gotten bad litigation wise. So now just cast me as the guy once a time.
Brian's vision that built that Fury. Yeah.
There you go. And so, so there it is, right? So obviously not having Mark a key component to the success of that, because the narrative was the initial narrative was driven by him, continued on by Brian through the pictures. I thought, like, you're a brand and industry, I don't know if it's yourself. If you are running into this right now, wouldn't you want to invest in a version in which you never run into this again?
Exactly. That's exactly. Yep. That's exactly it.
And he's by contrast, and I don't want to put you down, Shawn, and certainly I'm not here trying to be overly humble. By contrast, you and I are not Brian Hitch.
No, I'm well aware of that. You're not putting me down.
These guys are, they are the exemplaries in that field, right?
Yeah.
Right now, the way Brian Hitch draws, he still draws like a beast.
Right. And he is the superhero team artist of all superhero team artists.
It could be argued, and I would probably be right in that argument with you. Like, oh, who else could it be? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But maybe because the conversation wasn't about that, and certainly Twitter isn't, it's 240 characters, whatever. I just didn't want to go in there. Why didn't you, why don't you do this on your own? But it really did make me think, like, I wonder if there is a disconnect there. Not knowing Brian at all, not knowing some of these creators who are also hopping into the conversation, right? Like, I wonder if there is a disconnect of, like, you clearly understand that there is value in the work that you do, and it just happens to be that the work is for mainstream companies. What does it look like if you were to do that work for yourself?
Right, exactly.
How would you shift your expectation of success so that you wouldn't look at it as like 60, 70, 80, 100,000 copies of Marvel, but $0 from mainstream?
Right. I mean, my take from it was because I saw a bunch of creators like complaining about it on Facebook, and I just wanted to say, like, why do you continue working for these companies? Like, you can go off and you don't have to do this anymore.
Right.
I mean, these are established creators who have been around for a while, and they can very well. I mean, I know it's not easy. I know it's easy to say, but I mean, I jumped ship. You jumped ship. I mean, you can. I mean, we are the visionaries of, like, all this stuff they're taking from us. We can just leave with, and then they won't have it, and we can own our own shit.
I mean, and also, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be the next day, but eventually mainstream comics, you're going to phase out.
Oh, it's already starting.
There's very few people that have that level of longevity as far as, like, continuously, doing stuff. And those are exceptional, right? You can pick them out. Right? You can say, oh, so-and-so is still good. He's been working since whenever. Right. But there are plenty of people who are cranking on comics, and you and I like them, they might not necessarily be the big names, but certainly we like them, right? Mm-hmm. And they just phased them out because they moved on to the next person that's going to be able to do that thing, or, they knew the favor to, they knew the favor lever to pull. Right. And they ended up being in that office, and that previous guy's not there anymore, Right. And so knowing that there is a time horizon for your relevancy in mainstream comics, why wouldn't you start that journey for yourself, like, right now? Of course, there's going to be things that factor into that. Maybe you don't have the savings to be able to do it. Maybe you're not in the, the right sort of financial position to be able to say, I'm just going to leave, right? But man, I would just encourage, not necessarily Brian Hitch in specific, because again, I don't know the man, I don't know his situation, I don't know his habits, I don't know his nuances, but a Brian Hitch type, to be like, get away from there. Yeah,
I agree. And I mean, there's a conversation I had with an artist in Boston, and this artist is a beast, a powerhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, an amazing talent. And he was telling me he's going to work on this book at DC. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I asked him who's writing. And it was a writer I've worked with that is so awful and so terrible and so bad. And I was just like, wow, you're just cool with doing that. The lack of respect it shows the artist to take a hack writer and give them the script for someone who's of this caliber of talent is crazy to me. I mean, and it just got me thinking. And I was like, I see. Well, not now because I don't pay attention, but when I paid attention, one of the things that would always irk me a lot was new writer given great talent. Like I remember it was like one of the last years at Marvel, it was like a brand new writer. And they were like, and Chris Boccello's drawing the book. And I was like, I wonder. And I started to look, can I find a book with Grant Morrison writing and a new talent drawing?
Right.
And it just doesn't exist.
Right.
And it's an absolute lack of respect for the medium and the artists in the medium.
Sure.
And
but it does go to show that it's probably less about the creators, because in that case, I try to take a step back and take maybe like a 10,000 foot view of something, right? So in the position that you're taking, the premise that you're saying is like, you would never give a brand new artist to a seasoned writer, right?
I'm just saying they don't. They
typically don't. Right.
It doesn't happen. It's just
right. They typically don't, right? Because out of respect and out of courtesy to that seasoned writer, but it doesn't seem to fare very well when the roles are switched, right? When they're flipped over, right? I step back and I go like, that editorial office must really understand the power of book A, B, and C, IP, W, X, Y, Z, right? Because you dangle that in front of anybody, right? And they'll be like, whoa, that is freaking awesome. I want to be involved in that. I want to be part of that logo experience,
Right.
And that really does speak to, I think, how the turnover happens, right? Because there's always going to be somebody new who has never experienced an artist who is just at the corner turn, right? Who wants that Spider-Man book, who doesn't have the experience and the sort of, the understanding of what that industry means. And so they're always going to get somebody, and good on them, right? Yeah, obviously, you allow that to. I would never want to take a Spider-Man book away from a new kid who's willing to try it. But it speaks to how this continues to happen, that Bryan Hitch is able to bring up that story of why he's not compensated. Because if he does say, hey, I want a contract that allows me for that, right? They can go like, nah, we'll go find this new kid that'll draw it.
Right.
For something else, and he can potentially phase himself out by his own design, by his own asks. Anyway, it is to say, I really hope the Bryan Hitches of the world is, and if he ends up listening to this, or somebody starts, ends up clipping this, and I'm coming at it from a high level of regard and respect for his body of work. Almost a reverence for the stuff that he's helped to establish, and the inspiration that he's given to me whenever I see it, and whenever I dip into my memory and the emotion, the space that I occupy when I think like that felt so freaking good. That is how big blockbuster superhero books are meant to be done.
Sure.
And I really do hope he finds the traction that he needs in order to say, you don't need them.
Yeah, I agree.
You can do this, but it's going to take time, but you're going to have to hold on.
Right. It's a conversation I have with Klaus every time we're together, because Klaus doesn't realize the pedigree he is and what he's capable of, I don't think, at the time.
Yeah. Well, it is, like you said, it's been, it's whatever. There's systems in place, not malicious, but systems in place that have you define your worth through the thing or character or book that you're working on, not necessarily because you have a clear understanding that the worth is you, and it just happens to be that you're working on this thing,
Right.
All right. We're at that hour, buddy boy.
Yes, we are. Another one.
Well, you look particularly good. You looked good that entire hour. That never fell out of focus. Well, now it did, but
because I leaned back too much.
Yeah, too far. All right, we get to do this again. This is a ton of fun. Oh wait, we might not be able to do this next week.
All right, you're recording still. Are you intentionally recording still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we can reschedule.
All right, let me end this broadcast really quick.
Okay.
Let me talk about it. All right.
the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life,